So I'm joined by Matthew Higgs, who is the curator of True Faith here at Manchester Art Gallery as part of MIF, Manchester International Festival. Thank you for joining me. So let's start by telling me all about True Faith and the exhibition.
True Faith's exhibition takes the work of Joy Division and New Order, two iconic Manchester bands, as its subject, but also as its point of departure. And we didn't want to make an exhibition that was kind of biography of the band, like the exhibition David Bowie is. What we were more interested in doing was making an exhibition to look at how Joy Division and New Order's ideas found other forms, and how their work influenced other artists, designers, filmmakers, and so on. So the exhibition is very much about the ongoing legacy of Joy Division and New Order, and not so much an exhibition about nostalgia. It's really about how these ideas remain in the present. And just as Joy Division and New Order's music was always very forward-looking, we're interested in this sort of tension between the band's past and its present and its future. And it's great that it's happening as part of the Manchester International Festival, because New Order are revisiting their own work in a series of performances this week with the artist Liam Gillick. So it's really, the exhibition's also about the nature of collaboration between the band members, but also with the people that they worked with. Tony Wilson from Granada TV and also Factory Records. But also the designer Peter Saville is a very important part of this story, how his visuals for the band are also as important in terms of the way that we understand and think about Joy Division and New Order's music.
So what exactly inspired obviously the two bands, but what was it in particular that inspired the exhibition that we're seeing today?
Myself and John Savage and Peter Saville a number of years ago were working on an exhibition about Joy Division that was going to take place in Macclesfield, which is where Ian Curtis came from. And that exhibition didn't work out exactly as we imagined, but at that time we thought there was a much more larger exhibition to be made that looked at the legacy of these incredible bands, and really to think about how a band can function beyond simply being its music, but a band can function as a kind of catalyst, and a band can actually be generative in the sense that their work generates other work. So we thought that trying to do this in Manchester was obviously the most appropriate context, but it's also the most complicated context, because the band have such a history here and there's such an idea about the band here. And I think the opportunity to do this as part of the festival, and especially at Manchester Art Gallery, just seemed to create a sort of perfect storm of circumstances for the exhibition.
And is there a particular piece that resonates with you at the exhibition?
Well, I think in this room, this installation, Martin Boyce, an artist based in Glasgow, who became an artist really because of his interest in New Order. All of the fluorescent trees you see and the sort of park benches are part of a larger installation he first showed in Glasgow, and it was a very kind of immersive theatrical space, and we've almost mimicked that space for the installation here. So what we want is that the viewer steps into a very kind of self-consciously theatrical environment, and Martin said the space was very much influenced by the sort of atmosphere of New Order's music. So we wanted to create a space or a place that these other works could occupy, so you find yourself in a kind of landscape that's orienting around Martin Boyce's work. But obviously Peter Saville's record designs, I think, are fundamental to everything else you'll see in the exhibition.
I think the trees are certainly very powerful. As soon as you walk into the exhibition you go, wow, okay, what's all this about?
And Martin described the original installation as a sort of park at night when everyone's gone to bed, and it's a place where youth or teenagers might gather.
Absolutely. I think the piece that's kind of caught my attention the most has got to be Ian Curtis's handwritten lyrics of Love Will Tear Us Apart. How did you get hold of that?
Well, that comes from his family.
Okay.
And the lyrics of Ian Curtis were published in a book recently, and as I said, we didn't really want the exhibition to be about memorabilia and ephemera, but there are very important things here from the band and from people associated with the band. And I think what they all do is they all add something to the larger narrative. And of course his writing for the band and the songs that they made is equally influential, say, to the visuals of Peter Saville. So we wanted a trace of that too.
And what do you think it is about Manchester in particular that allowed Joy Division and New Order to thrive in the way that they did?
Well, I think, I grew up in the Northwest in the late 1970s, and it was a pretty grim place. And Manchester in the late 70s was a very kind of dark place, still really coming out of the 19th century and the Industrial Revolution. It felt very, very Victorian. And I think what was interesting about Joy Division's music at that time was that they were looking forward to an unknown future. So that tension between the past and the present and the future, something I think is very central to Joy Division and New Order's music. And it's central, I think, to the way that they impacted on other people's lives. So that sort of idea of the space between dark and light, which really brackets Joy Division in 1978 and New Order at the end of the 80s when they were in Ibiza, acid house is happening. Within that decade, there's been this sort of transformative thing, which happened in Manchester too, through their nightclub, the Hacienda and so on. So somehow Joy Division they're almost like their DNA is in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had to tie up, pin you into a corner and say pick your favourite out of the two, who would it be, New Order or Joy Division?
I think certainly in terms of the impact it had on me as a young person, it would be Joy Division, because it was really transformed my idea of what the world might be and what the world was. But as I've got older, I think the music I return to more is New Order.
And are you going to see New Order
I'll
this
go
week?
see them tonight, yeah.
Oh, it's going to be very special. I've heard that the rehearsals are absolutely epic.
I saw a rehearsal earlier in the week and it's incredible. I think people are going to be blown away.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Thank you very much for your time
course,
today, Matthew, and good luck with the exhibition.
Okay, cheers.